Hello everyone, I'm Mike Heaton and welcome to another edition of Mic'd Up Sports, the show that goes in depth with the people who build our sports community. Normally I would do an open, but the guest we have today has such a long list of accomplishments that it would take me a really long time to go through them all. Crystal Flint, the head coach for Cretin-Derham Hall girls basketball, and you just finished up another triple threat girls clinic, if I understand correctly.
Yes, I did. I just finished up a first annual triple threat Be Elite middle school clinic, which was a 3-week program sponsored by the Minneapolis Parks and Recreation Board. So it's very, very good.
Well, glad to hear that, and thanks for taking some time out of your day to share your history with sports. And I know it's a really long one, so we'll start from the beginning. When did you get that first itch for basketball or any other sport? When did you get that first itch to become a player?
To become a player?
Well, you started as a player, right?
Right. Okay, but I thought you meant, the mentorship and things like that.
We'll get to that.
Okay,
but,
yeah.
No, you started as a player.
Well, to become a player, that was probably, I don't know, I probably was in 4th, 5th grade, something like that. And at that time, girls didn't play basketball with other girls. So always, maybe 1 or 2 girls on a boys' team. So I want to say I was about that young. My oldest brother was killed when he was 15. I was about to be 10. When my mother took me and my siblings to counseling, the counselor told all of us that we should find something to do to occupy that time in memory of my brother, and I happened to choose basketball. Was the one thing that he did really well that I wanted to do in honor of him. So that I about say around that time.
And do you remember watching your older brother play, like when he would go to games? Just watching from the bleachers?
No, not necessarily. He was just, he was really skilled in a lot of different things. Actually, he rode bikes, so, similar to what Tony Hawk does on a skateboard, he did on a bicycle at that time. So, really cutting edge type things. So he kind of did it all. Before then, I ran track. So track actually is my first love. But I really, really excelled in basketball, so I went that route.
I never would have guessed that you were a track lover. Not that there's anything wrong with that, or there's a lot of multi-sport athletes. And so when you took up the sport of basketball, how do you think that helped you as far as processing a major transitional event at such a young age?
Well, again, it occupied that downtime. So it just got me connected with a lot of different people. It wasn't until high school that I really played at a level that I thought I could do something with it. Meaning, my AAU coach would always say to use basketball as a vehicle to get an education. So it was around 9th grade that I was like, I think I'm pretty good, and I kept hearing it. You can play in college. You can play in college. So it was at that time that I knew I could do more. But in terms of just occupying that time, I think young people need something to do to occupy any time. Never mind the major traumatic things that happen in our lives, but just to have something to do to keep you off the streets, to keep you away from the ills of life. Basketball was my filter.
And as you were growing as a young basketball prodigy, I know you grew up in Roxbury, a suburb of Boston, if I'm correct. So
Not suburb.
Oh, it's within
That's
Boston.
The city.
It is okay.
Right
so it is
in
within
the smack
so
middle.
It's an enclave then. It's an enclave within Boston.
Yeah.
So I have to imagine you grew up watching the Celtics play, or at least that's right. You grew up in the middle of their '80s dynasty.
That's right.
So
with Larry Bird, and I remember Tiny Archibald, and not so much as JoJo White. I heard about him. That was a little bit. M.L. Carr, those Kevin McHale. That heyday of Boston Celtics is what I remember, and I actually, really enjoyed the most. It was after, I want to say that Lynn Bias died, is when I, kind of was like, I don't know if I think I'm gonna go with another team. And at that time, Michael Jordan was coming along. So like everybody else, we all want to be like Mike, and we enjoyed the Chicago Bulls at that time. So I kind of went away. I'm not your average. My husband gives me a hard time all the time about how I jump ship with this team and that team, and you're not a Dyer, you're not from Boston. I'm like, I am, but I like what I like. So, I'm doing. People are doing now what I've done years before, which was follow great players, So, wherever LeBron goes, I enjoy, and he really has a hard time with that because of the Lakers and the Celtics. Like, how can you like the Lakers? And it's like, I don't necessarily like the Lakers. I like LeBron James. So, but everybody's kind of going, especially with players jumping from team to team. So. But yeah, I was a huge Boston Celtics fan at that time.
Huge fan until Michael came along, and then
Shaq Bulls, and the Penny, and and Penny Hardaway. Orlando Magic may have been my team if Shaq would have stayed. But then he went to LA, and I was like, at that time, I was like, I'm not gonna ever cheer for Los Angeles Lakers,
And look at you now.
And look at me now. Look what I got on.
Well, I mean, the colors are understandable. Cretin-Derham Hall, they wear the purple and gold, but
a Boston Celtics fan would never wear this.
I know what you mean. Actually, your whole episode of Sports Allegiance reminds me of our mutual friend Brianna, who is taking a break from the Lakers because she's not the biggest LeBron fan.
Yeah.
So she's waiting until he leaves or retires. And
I'm going to help her with that. I'll help her with that, especially while she had a knee surgery.
Right.
So
yep.
Maybe that'll change.
Yes, but we love giving her a hard time, but only because she's a big fan of the sport. And I get that too, because I grew up in Minnesota, so I was a Wolves fan, but I got to see the tail end of the Bulls dynasty.
Okay.
So I got to see Michael Jordan with that Game 6, 98 finals winning jumper against Utah. So that I remember watching that live. So no, I understand. And
awesome.
As kind of what you're alluding to, even back then, pro sports and even college sports to an extent is a business, and that means, hey, you are free to cheer for whoever you'd like.
That's right.
But hey, you got some good memories though with Boston, '84 and '86. I think I have to imagine those 2 years stood out.
Absolutely.
As a young basketball fan.
Absolutely, and I I wasn't as in tune. No, I shouldn't say in tune, but I didn't know the game then like I know it now. So it was just the hype of it all at that time. Because I was like 12 years old, 13, 14 years old, just really starting to watch women's basketball at that time as well, with Cheryl Miller and USC and those teams like Old Dominion at that time were like maybe our UConns and Tennessees now. Well, not Tennessee, but they're coming back around. They're coming back around. But so I started to pay a little bit more attention, and it's easy to cheer for the home team when they're dynasty like the Celtics is, or was at that time. So it wasn't so much as for the reasons that I enjoy it now, although sports in general is kind of changing. Even youth, especially youth sports, actually. It has come a long way, and the focus has shifted a little bit, but the talent is through the roof, so.
I'm glad you brought up watching all those college teams with USC. Young Cynthia Cooper, I think, was a part of that as well. Louisiana Tech, young Kim Mulkey. But there wasn't a lot of coverage of the women's game back then, not until you got to the Final Four, I think. Do you remember the first women's basketball game that you saw on television?
You see, actually, the first women's game that I actually saw in person before we go on to television, I would say is my AAU coach. We had the premier AAU program in Boston. which was the Shelburne Smokers. And we had players like Michelle Edwards, who went on to play at University of Iowa, as well as Robin Christensen. And I came to Minnesota later on, and I had a teammate that went to Ohio State, Avril Roberts. She was the Big Ten Freshman of the Year my freshman year. But so I want to say it was when Ohio State was recruiting Avril, which was probably, I don't know, maybe my junior year in high school, that we went and we watched them play, if my memory serves me correctly, maybe Northeastern University, that Ohio State played them at. Or yeah, I want to say it would have had to been like Northeastern or BC or one of those teams. So, but that was the first time I ever seen, women playing college at that level, and I was just like, wow. But it would have been that USC team that played on national television at that time, and Cheryl Miller, and I was just like, wow, this is some high level basketball, but not really paying attention to it, but just like, that's pretty cool, that's women's college basketball, but that was few and far in between. It probably was only the championship at that time, not like we see it now. And I want to say that it probably wasn't even set up the way it is now. It definitely wasn't 64 teams, because we didn't go to 64 teams until my senior year in college. So at that time, it was probably, 32 teams, or maybe even less than that at that time. So the women's game has grown, and you can see games now, but we still have a far way to go in terms of coverage. We were just joking about ESPNW, like, that wasn't even thought of back then. Well, WNBA wasn't even around at that time. I remember coming to Minnesota, which was really something that kind of appealed to my young mind, is that Coach LaRue Fields, who was the coach that recruited me, she talked about how the girls' high school state tournament was televised. So, it was on Channel 9, just as it is now. And I was just like, wow, a whole week of girls' basketball. I was like, yeah, I was just like, that's pretty cool, Where Boston, we don't have anything, or we didn't have anything even close to that back then. Now, print media wasn't where it is now either, but I'm glad that all those things are coming along. They got a long way to go, but it's not where it used to be, so that's a good thing.
So, growing up with the Celtics in your backyard, and then watching the USC dynasty from the early to mid 80s, and all the other players you got to see, as a high school player yourself, or in the AAU circuit, who was your idol? Who was the player you wanted to be? You mentioned Jordan. Was that your goal, or did you have another player that you really wanted to be like?
I will say that I did, again, like everyone else, Michael Jordan was a huge standard, but there was a young lady from the Orchard Park community. If you're familiar with New Edition at all, it's the same housing project that we all came from. But there was a girl there named Cynthia Cooper, who was also, did I say Cynthia Cooper?
You said Cooper.
That's not Cooper. Her name was Cynthia Cropper. Cynthia Cropper was her last name. And she actually went to Fisk University. She went to my same high school. She also was the senior class president. And I played basketball. I was the senior high school president. I was from Orchard Park. So I kind of was like, that's a young lady that I wouldn't mind, being like. And I was like, I'm going to go to a HBCU just like she did, until I found out they don't give scholarships. and
they do now.
They do now, but at
not,
that time,
but not in 1990.
There was no such thing as a woman's full scholarship to a HBCU at that time. So she was a woman that I, really, I wouldn't say idolized. I don't idolize anyone, but that I was like, she's doing something that I wouldn't mind doing. I had women in my community from my older sister, who she went to college later in life, but she went to college. I had other friends. I ended up moving from Orchard Park to live with my grandmother, my father's mother, and she lived in another area of the city called Dorchester. And, you know, all the girls, and we call it our block, they all went to college. None of them went on a basketball scholarship, but they weren't teenage moms. They came from good families, and they went to college. A few of them went to Salem State University and got degrees, and a couple of them teach now. But those were the women that I wanted to be like, you know, as well as my mom and my grandma, who's hardworking. Didn't go to college, didn't get an education, but you know that I wanted to be more like that. Now, in terms of my game on the court, yeah, I watched Michael Jordan's games. That was my pregame, to watch his "Come Fly With Me" videos, and I just thought I was gonna fly through the air and dunk as well. I really had, like, I convinced my teammates, Shannon Lobline, Kara Pearson. We joke all the time, and they really, I had them thinking like, I'm gonna be the first woman to dunk in a game. And but you know, we talked about that kind of stuff, which is cool.
So you didn't quite get to that achievement, but the hard-working part you've got down. I don't think anyone would dispute that.
And I graduated.
Yes,
you know,
yes.
I finished college. I tore my knee. I had you know, I see a lot of girls tearing their ACLs now. And it's something that, you know, I immediately reach out to those girls and let them know, like, you could do it. I did it my freshman year, and then I did it my sophomore year in college. Freshman year, didn't play a game, was just going up for a layup, jumped off the wrong foot, landed, and my knee buckled, tore my ACL. Rehab back, it was like a whole year rehab. Mm-hmm. Third game of the season, my sophomore year, I did the same thing to my other knee, you know. And so I only played really about 2.5 years at the U, you know. So, which I, you know, I think that was something that I'm probably most proud of myself, of persevering through that. You know, that could have been easily a career-ending, you know, type of injury. And I know I'm kind of rambling, but I hope you don't mind. But I did it again after I graduated, which turned me to officiating. You know, that was the reason why I was like, I'm not playing basketball anymore. I'm going to go and officiate.
Well, you're setting up some nice teases as we move along. I remember an earlier conversation we had when you were playing high school AAU. One of your mentors at the time was Alfreda Harris.
Yep. Yeah.
I think her nickname was the godmother of hoops, something like that.
Yep.
And so she was your AAU coach.
Yep. Yeah, one of them.
She
was actually over the program. My actual, because she had the older girls, so she had the 18s, and a woman by the name of Diane Galloway, Sherry Cope, they had the 16s. So Miss Harris really, you know, ran the entire operation, and she had the older girls, and then Diane had us younger girls, and both teams went to AAU Nationals every year. In fact, one of the coaches, Tanya Cardoza, who ended up playing with Don Staley at University of Virginia, and she's now the head, well, she was an assistant at UConn during, you know, when they really started rolling and getting championships, and she's now the head coach at Temple University. So we've had some outstanding players that have come from the Boston area. No one stayed at home, but you know, that really just kind of set the foundation for someone like myself to aspire and do more with basketball.
So in your AAU or high school days, what were some of your favorite memories or just moments that convinced you that your basketball skills could get you places?
Well, just being with these women or girls at the time, and just seeing them, you know, go away to school, come back, traveling outside of Boston. We would go to Connecticut. We would go to Vermont. We would go to Providence, Rhode Island, and play in tournaments and win those tournaments, and then go and play AAU basketball. So I went, like I said, I went every summer. We went to Miami, Florida. We went to Clovis, New Mexico. Like, when am I ever going to go to Clovis, New Mexico? But AAU, afforded me that. We went to Charleston, West Virginia, and just those memories of, getting on my first plane and going to Birmingham, Alabama that was a youth games, youth Olympics. We went there through that same program, and just being with the girls, and seeing players from all over the country and just competing and having fun. So I'm glad that my own children have been able to experience that and, get out of Minnesota and see another part of the world that you probably wouldn't go and see. So those are the things that at that time, I really can't tell you a whole lot about what this score was and what that score was, but I can definitely tell you about, eating at Red Roof Inns and and Bob Evans, and so those memories are what stick out more than how many points I scored or who we beat by how much.
And that's a vibe I get even now when players wrap up their careers, whether it's college or the pros. Fans get caught up in the wins and losses, and then you realize as you get older, or you do my job for 10 years where you're just doing nothing but reporting on it, and there's a life after basketball, and you are not defined solely by the titles you win or your win-loss record. It's about more than that, like you alluded to.
Absolutely, and that's why you follow me on Facebook and stuff, and I talk to parents about don't get caught up in the wins and losses. Don't beat your kids up. Like, let them enjoy the process of it all. Have fun with it. Yeah, the wins will come, but you learn a lot from defeat as well, and just let it happen and enjoy the moment, and be there to console them and be there to cheer with them when those victories do come. But and these are all women that I still keep in contact with to this day. A lot of us coach either in the college level or AAU or high school basketball. So it's good to see everybody is still giving back to those either less fortunate or just sharing, your expertise and your experience with someone else. So that's cool.
Now, you said basketball gave you the opportunity to see the world. And I guess you lived that statement, and you were an embodiment of it, because coming from high school, from your town of Roxbury, you came all the way over here to Minnesota. You mentioned LaRue Fields was the one who got you here.
Yeah.
Do you remember what the recruitment process was like for you, and what led you to go all the way from Boston out here to the Twin Cities?
Sure. My team, as I said, we'd had or our AAU program. Unfortunately, a lot of the colleges back home, really didn't recruit the kids from the inner city. So other schools, other states were, coming in and saying, hey, Boston has some really good talent. And so, like I said, we had players that started with Medina Dixon, who actually went and played at University of Kansas. She was the first really in our program that went out and explored playing for another college outside of Massachusetts. And then Iowa started coming in. And then Trish Roberts was the head coach at Michigan, and she would come in. So Coach Fields was friends with C. Vivian Stringer, who was the women's basketball coach at Iowa. And she was like, yeah, there's some talent in Boston. So Coach Fields came in, and she saw me. And in all honesty, I wasn't the best player on my team. My team had some serious scorers, but I was really a role player, utility player, got us rebounds, got us steals, same thing that I did when I was in college. And so LaRue Fields started coming in, and she got to know my AAU coach, and you know how that works. And so whenever we would go to nationals, she would come in and check our games out, and then would come back and maybe caught a game or two of my high school games, and just started calling, started building that rapport. As I said, University of Michigan also recruited me. I visited Arizona State. That was one of my visits that I did. So that process was, really kind of similar to how it is now in terms of coaches coming in, checking out your game, calling you up, sending you handwritten notes, and wasn't no Twitter and inboxing and all that stuff. So they did it the old-fashioned way, where they sent you a letter in the mail. You knew a coach was serious when you got a handwritten note from them, which is something that when I started coaching, I made sure that, okay, if this is our top tier athlete, then I'm going to write them a note so that they could see that this is personalized and it's different than something that we just send all 500 campers at a camp, So it was pretty cool to, be singled out. But like I said, I went to maybe one basketball camp ever, which was a Blue Star camp at Rutgers University. And I had an amazing showing there, wore the wrong jersey number, so don't wear the wrong jersey. Make sure you wear your own jersey so that the coaches can relate to you.
Look what happened in Argentina.
What happened?
In a FIBA tournament, I think Argentina wore the wrong jersey and they had to forfeit a game. FIBA tournament.
Oh, really? No, I wore another player's number.
Okay.
Like
so
my roommate, we swapped it, so they thinking I'm that person, or maybe they didn't. You know what I mean by that time. But those were the things that I was blessed enough to be able to be recruited from some of the top schools in the country, or actually really not the top school. Minnesota was last in the Big Ten at that time, but
still D1.
It's Division I. That's true. And the other thing and this is what I try to relate to kids as well, is go with who wants you. Go with where you feel you can fit. Because I looked at University of Minnesota. I was like, man, they're in last place, number one. I can play there right away, number two. So people look at the powerhouses and the winners, and that's fine if you fit in there. But if you're gonna sit and you're gonna play behind a bunch of people, go where. And mind you, there was no WNBA, so it wasn't like, oh, I want to go so that I can be seen, so that I can be drafted. It was like, no, I'm going to college. I want to play, so I'm going to go somewhere I can play right away. And University of Minnesota was one of those places, as well as Coach LaRue Fields. I was a student that struggled with the ACT test, so there was something called Prop 48 at that time, that if you didn't get a particular SAT score, then you would have to sit. You would be academically ineligible right away. And Coach Fields is one of those coaches, and her staff that consisted of Karen Trusky and Clem Haskins' daughter, Clemette Haskins, was an assistant at that time. And Coach Joan, dang it, her name is escaping me right now, but anyway, they stayed on me. They kept recruiting. They kept sending me notes. They kept calling me, showing that, like, you don't have it right now, but we're still very, very interested in you. So that was one of the reasons that I chose Minnesota. And then when I came and I visited, Coach Fields she was my kind of coach. She was hard-nosed coach, straight to the point. I thought that she truly cared for me as a person.
So you come here, and as you mentioned earlier, 2 ACL tears. So you only played a total of 3 games in your first 2 seasons. On top of that, your freshman year, the coach who recruited you, LaRue Fields, announced that she was going to retire from the Minnesota job at the end of the 89-90 season. So how did you handle those first couple of years where I imagine you're frustrated not being able to play, and then you also have to go through a coaching change before you even get a chance to really showcase your potential?
Right, right. Before we go on, it was Coach Joan Campbell. Coach Campbell was the other coach that helped recruit. She was phenomenal picking me up from the airport. I just don't want to. I don't even know if you're going to use this, but I did want to say her name.
You're a walking encyclopedia, so
I just wanted to say her name. I don't want to shout out Coach Campbell. But anyway, yeah. So when that happened, I really was devastated, and I'm glad you showed that video again because I hadn't seen that in years.
Our old friend Tony had a copy of it
Yes.
after he died. I'm like, all right.
That was awesome. That was awesome to see, and just seeing how young I was, and but she, and Coach Fields was a major influencer of me in that short period of time. But when I found out she was leaving, I was like, man, I'm not staying at Minnesota. I'm getting ready to transfer. So I mean, if there was a transfer portal at that time, there's no transfer portal. But I was just like, man, I'm out of here. I'm not playing here. My coach is gone. I'm out. But and good thing I didn't truly understand how transferring worked, because I thought if I transferred, I would lose a year. I could have transferred, but I could have just sat out. I wouldn't have been eligible to play, but you wouldn't lose that year. And I didn't understand that, so I didn't even pursue it, which was a blessing in disguise that I didn't understand that rule properly. Because still, when Coach Fields recruited me, she told me one of the things that really stuck to me to this day is that she said that coming to Minnesota, that my opportunities after basketball would be much greater than they were when I played, and that's true. I worked for the Minnesota Twins my senior year, that summer in college. After I graduated, and unfortunately it was the year of the lockout.
The players' strike, yeah, that
Right.
canceled the World Series.
Right. But it's funny because when Joe Mauer came and they retired his number and stuff like that, he came and we did a mass with him. Dave St. Peter, who is the president, he was like the community outreach director. He was my boss. And I was like, just imagine what I could have been had I stayed with the Twins. But, I mean, I did that. I was an assistant at Minnesota. I was the head coach at Concordia University in St. Paul. So just those opportunities that I got just from playing at the only Division I university in the state was really good. Like I got a shot, or people were intrigued by the idea of a Gopher being a part of their program, which to this day, is still carries some weight that I'm appreciative of.
And patience and persistence did pay off for you. You got to play. You made the NCAA tournament, part of the first Gophers team to do that.
Yes.
And I guess since you've been name dropping, I know some names you got to play alongside with. Well, Leah Bielson, you didn't get to play with her because she was going, but Dana Jobert, Kara Pearson, you mentioned her, Carol Ann Shudlick, I believe.
Carol Ann,
Shannon Lubline, Ellen Kramer.
Ellen was a senior the year that I tore my knee the second time. So her senior year, I was really looking. Now that's one person that I would have loved. Like Ellen was one of the grittiest, undersized, just relentless, hard-working player. I really, really respected and admired her game. But no, I didn't get the opportunity to work with her or to play with her because my freshman year, which was, I want to say, her junior year. Yeah. And I actually never, I got to play with Dana Jobert a little bit because I was coming off my second knee injury. So, but Dana was a great player as well. Carol Ann ended up winning the Wade Trophy our senior year. That class was an awesome class. We had an outstanding point guard in Nikki Coates, who was from Leavenworth, Kansas. She was my roommate. Kara Pearson and Shannon Lobline, from Harding High School, just some of the best players, to come out of this city of St. Paul was really cool to play with those ladies. And again, we're all, we pick up right where we left off from that last year. But that was a really special time playing for the University of Minnesota and being the first team ever to go to an NCAA tournament. Thank goodness that they changed they increased the number to 64.
Right, you told me. They went to 64.
The year before it was 32, so we wouldn't have made it had it been 32. But we upset Iowa our last home game, which was a very, very memorable game outside of beating Notre Dame at Notre Dame.
Right, I was going to say, had it not expanded to 64, not only would you have not held the distinction of being the first Gophers team to reach the tournament, you're also part of the first team to get a tournament victory.
Yes, yep.
Over,
out of that, yeah. And
whatever happened to Notre Dame?
Right. Well, it's funny because Morgan, her name, Morgan's her last name. Beth Morgan is on their staff. She's an assistant coach right now at Notre Dame, but she was a freshman and she wreaked havoc on us that game. But they weren't the Notre Dame that they are now. They were just kind of turning that corner as well. But very, very well-coached team. Their assistant coach, Carolyn, I can't remember her last name, but I just, when I was at USA Basketball with Trey this past summer, Neil Ivey, who is...
Just took NBA job.
Yes, with the Indiana Pacers, I think she's with. She's from Indiana. I can't remember where she's at, but anyway, her son plays, he's going to Purdue University as well. But I was talking to her about, we beat Notre Dame. And she was like, really? She's an alum at Notre Dame as well. But that was pretty cool to meet her, talk to her during that whole time we were at Colorado Springs, and to see her, get promoted and go on and be an assistant in the NBA, which is phenomenal.
So, not only did you make that tournament, as we noted earlier, as kind of the hype was growing around that 93-94 team, I remember you sent me an old tape, and I thought this was kind of cool. Don Shelby from WCCO,
yes.
He was the anchor at the time,
yes.
and I didn't know how much of a proponent he was of women's sports until 10 years later, Wayland's Final Four run. But he went out there and put a call out to bring people, to encourage folks around the metro to come out and watch your team play. How cool was that to have one of the most prominent anchors in the Twin Cities be an advocate for women's basketball?
That was outside of that, being the first team to go to the tournament and winning that game. That's right up there with that for me. When I see Don Shelby, I saw Don Shelby a few years ago at the State Fair, and I ran over and gave him a hug. And he really, because he didn't have to do that. You know what I mean? And I think he has daughters too, and his daughters probably were little girls at that time. But for him to do that, and like I mentioned earlier, coverage of women's outside of the state tournament that they do, you didn't see highlights of women on. And Don said, I never forget it was called Go for a Record. And
I see what he did there.
Yeah, Go for a Record. And he did that, and we ended up having, I don't know, probably at that time about 48,000, not 48,000.
Hey, if it had 48,000,
no,
that would have been,
right.
I mean.
Yeah, we would have broke the walls down.
Hey, 48,000 would be cool.
No, he ended up.
I think it was 6,000.
It was 6,800 or 4,800.
It was substantially more than what you usually got.
Absolutely. So, and it was Williams Arena, so it probably was the whole bottom rung of Williams Arena. I remember Jimmy Jam. Terry Lewis was there.
Oh wow!
I tell people, this is a little untruth here. I was like, yeah, Prince was in the stands. He came to the game. I don't think Prince was there, but I do remember just seeing the highlights from it, and I remember coming up from downstairs and just first of all, when we were down in the tunnel area, just hearing the roar, and it's just like,
That's right, because
wow.
you have to walk all the way
And
up.
then we
like
came
the Gophers
upstairs, and
like
I
they do
was
now.
just like, wow. You're talking about nerves. So we played Purdue and Indiana, and we beat them both. So we upset, I want to say Purdue was like 16th probably at that time in the nation. And we beat Purdue and Indiana, which was a tough weekend for us typically. And it was just icing on a cake. I mean, Coach Haskins was there, so the men's program was there. I'm sure we had a bunch of high school players there. We had a lot of prominent people in the stands, and just the state came out, which was really, to see that from my freshman year, where it probably was about, I don't know, 20 people, not even a 1,000.
I know.
No.
I watched that because I watched that Minnesota-Michigan game. And
What year was that?
1990. It was the season finale. So like.
That probably, but then
senior night.
But then
yeah,
around what was happening, with Coach Fields leaving, and then the
right,
seniors, we had great seniors at that time.
It was still a small crowd.
No, I'm
compared to
talking
what you
about
get now.
when I first. I promise you, it's probably about 20, 30 people, and you could hear people's conversations at timeouts. Like, that's how empty it was, but to see where it is now is just phenomenal. And you got to remember, so we were in Williams Arena. The pavilion had just been built, right? And so then we moved over. So that probably actually was my junior year.
That's right.
I want to say that was my junior year, because we started off in Williams Arena, and then we finished in the pavilion. So, up until, I don't know, probably around when Lindsey Whalen came, we were the only team that had played in both. And then, the whole water main thing broke, and that sent
and
Whalen's
was
team
on her way
back over to Williams Arena, and then they started almost selling the place out. So that's what made them stay in Williams Arena. So that's pretty cool. That I share that history every once in a while, because people don't know that women's basketball, the Gophers, actually, the pavilion was their home, or was supposed to be their home. That's why it was built for volleyball and basketball and gymnastics. And then, because that used to be the hockey facility before Mariucci was built. So that was cool to, say, hey, I played on both sides of it, and which is I'm glad that and I know I'm kind of all over the place, but I'm glad that the girls' state tournament is back over on this side of town, or at the University of Minnesota, so that they can feel the intimacy of being, in a big crowd, because even that crowd in Target Center just does not compare.
Yeah,
it doesn't do
the
justice.
only time I felt, and I know we have been going all over the place, but that Central-South rivalry, that's the one time where I felt Target Center worked. Outside of that, it did feel kind of cavernous.
Yeah.
So even if I'm not the biggest Williams Arena fan, mainly due to the lack of space, it's an old building.
Oh, yeah.
For media accommodations, it's not great.
I could see that.
But again, that's minor nitpicking on my part.
Yeah.
But I was going to say that I imagine maybe that's a goal of yours as a coach. You played there, you were an official there, and it's like, how cool would it be to coach there, right?
That would be
You'd
awesome.
have the whole trifecta.
That would be awesome, and I'm sure not a lot of people will have been able to say that. But I just wish that, all girls would be able to play in a facility like that and see what that feels like. And Williams Arena is probably my all-time favorite arena to play in, because it's, I always felt like I was on stage, I was on display, and I'm getting ready to showcase my abilities. So you can't beat playing on that floor. And I know a lot of people are a little hesitant because it's raised and you can fall off, and I get that, but it is no other place like it. No other place like it.
No, and that raised floor design was the inspiration for the men's Final Four when they have it at all the football stadiums to increase seating capacity. But you mentioned Shelby. I guess I haven't had a chance to see him in years, but much like he stuck his neck out for the women's team, I credit him in part for turning me into a women's basketball fan.
Yeah.
Because I was a teenager. I was in high school when Wayland made the Final Four run, and the Golden Gopher women were all the rage. That's all folks wanted to talk about. And at the time, I was an aspiring broadcaster and thought to myself, if this big wig can get behind a women's team, I guess so can I.
That's right. And he was, he was that guy. You know, he was the face of TV news and well respected, and I'm glad that people heeded his call, and I'm glad that it was placed on his heart to do that, because it did actually change, just kind of the feeling of women's sports, and not only that it was a very good game, and we won, so that was icing on the cake. But you're absolutely right. Anytime I see Don, I thank him again, even probably 20-something years later.
25 years later.
That I'm still saying, thank you for that, because, a lot of people, they didn't care. Everybody was go for football and go for men's basketball and
the Wolves.
But yeah.
Wolves
because that was around that time.
They were in their 50th year or so.
Yeah,
so
for him to say, and we weren't the best team in the Big Ten. We was kind of middle of the pack at that time, but that was cool that he had the presence of mind to do that, and people still remember it, which is cool too. So
you end your college career with a trip to the second round in the tournament. The upset over Notre Dame, and then you said you worked for the Twins, and then you got into coaching.
Yep.
So right after you graduate from college, when did you, I guess, I'm trying to think if coaching or officiating came first. But
the coaching did.
Okay.
Yep.
So what led you to start your post-playing career as a coach and as an official?
Sure. Neither one ever crossed my mind. Like, nowhere in my scope of aspiring to do anything was coaching or officiating. But what happened was, so my head coach, Linda Hill McDonald, who ended up replacing Coach Fields, and she coached me.
She coached at Cleveland, right, too?
Yep.
For the Rockers?
After she resigned.
She was in the 99, she got to be in the 99 All-Star game.
Yep.
That's right.
She was the Cleveland Rockers coach. But so before that, I actually was about to graduate, and she told me, because I was taking a independent study class, and she said, Crystal, I see a lot of people that do not finish, those little small requirements like that. They just procrastinate. But she said, I'll tell you what I'll do. She said, I want you to be on my staff. She said, but you have to graduate, you have to get your degree. And I was just like, staff? Like, she was like, yeah, I want you to be an assistant coach at the U with me. And I was just like, why? And she said that it was because of my interactions at camps with the kids, that she was like, I think you would be an outstanding coach, and I'm gonna give you an entry-level position with me. She said I had to graduate, and she said that I had to wait a year until Shannon and Kara had graduated, because they were still there, and she didn't want, and she knew that we were really close, and she didn't, want that kind of dynamic. So I was like, well, all right, because I've been interviewing, and I kept getting denied, because as a scholarship athlete, you can't work during the year. So I kept getting decline letters saying that, lack of experience and stuff like that. So I was just like, well, if I don't get this job, I'm gonna go and, I'm gonna try it out. And I did, and just loved it. I wasn't very good at that time. But
I don't think
I did
too many
enjoy
folks
it.
are, unless you're Paige Beckers.
I didn't. No, I mean in terms of being an assistant coach.
Well,
I
it was
was
your.
just-
I mean, I don't.
Yeah, I didn't
That's
understand.
right.
You know, I didn't understand
It's
it
right.
all.
It's your first job, so
Yep.
I imagine there were some growing pains. But
Yep.
you're saying, so what did you learn, even if you weren't at the skill you are now?
Yeah.
How did that help plant the seeds?
I really enjoyed the recruiting process of it. I enjoyed the day-to-day. But I think one of the things was that Coach McDonald was going through a lot of issues with the university at that time with gender equity and
That's
stuff
right,
like
because
that.
the men and women were separate
Yep, yep,
until, I forget
Probably
the
about 3 years.
Maturi, until
yep.
Maturi merged them together.
Yeah. So I saw that, and that was a really trying time to see, you know, someone that you respected so much go through that kind of a process. So I don't think that she was able to really be the great coach that she actually was. So she's a phenomenal coach, I thought. Coach McDonald was a great teacher of the game. She knew her stuff, and I think the biggest thing that kind of lacked at that time was recruiting. But I really, you know, just getting my feet wet. I was just like, this is pretty cool. But I liked the day-to-day, and at that time, I just finished playing, so I wanted to still play, you know, my teammates and show them what I had. And it was like, no, it's not about you. It's about teaching them how to get better. So I had to learn that stuff. And then I went to Concordia in St. Paul, and I had an awesome assistant coach and a man named John Motherwell that he showed me.
He went to Minnesota, I think,
went to
for
Minnesota,
Marlene Stallings
yep,
for a time.
for a little bit, and just a really good behind the scenes. And I was just like, wow, I wasn't doing anything as an assistant, you know, just really, he would do things like, you know, stuff that before I needed it done, he did it, you know, and he really built me up as a great coach. You know, like he would go out and present to recruits that, you know, you have to come play for her. These are the reasons why. And I was just like, wow, that's what assistant coaches should have been doing. So, you know, it's stuff like that when I said I wasn't very good. But then I hired my assistant coach while I was at the U. Traker McMillan. I don't know if you remember her, but she ended up being the head coach at MCTC when they won the national championship before MCTC closed. But I just really, I never aspired to do it, but, you know, my coach telling me, I think this is something you can do. I think this is something that you would be great doing, gave me the confidence that I could do it. And then experience, just, you know, trial and error is what got me to where I am now. And they're still growing. I mean, any coach that's like, yeah, I'm this, I'm that, that's false. We're ever evolving. There's some things that I just learned, like, wow, I can't believe I haven't been doing this. So, you know, I just try to take bits and pieces from people that have impacted my life, and I try and incorporate it into what I do, and then give it to the kids.
Well, even Gino Auriemma and Cheryl Reeve had rough first years before they became who they were. Now, what would you say are the differences from coaching college basketball? You were at D1 and D2, and what are the differences between that level and coaching high school, which you've been doing for the last few years?
Well, I think they all have different levels. So, because when I first came from Minnesota and I went to Concordia, we were NAIA with no scholarships, you know. So then by my third year, which was my last year, they went Division II. So I transitioned them from NAIA to Division II to scholarship. So when I came from Minnesota, so I'm coming from budget, you know, resources, recruiting, anything I needed. I'm like, here, send this out and do this, do that. We have recruiting media guides and stuff like that. So when I came to Concordia, I was just like, yeah, well, where's the media guy? Where's the sports information director? And it was just like, you're that. you know, and I was just like, okay, so, but then I learned to do those things, you know, which is why I think I kind of do a pretty good job of promoting my teams, even because at that time we don't have Facebook, but I was just like, okay, well, we didn't have that, so I'm gonna bring that. So my team at Concordia, we had a media guide. I made it, you know, and then we flew everywhere. Well, they didn't have a budget to fly. So I'm just like, okay, so you just have to learn to be creative. And then from Division II to even high school, it's just like, you know, it's just resources. You have to learn to either get people to do those things that you need to done or to get done, or do it yourself. Find creative ways to do things, collaborate more. You know, whereas, you know, I may collaborate with another coach to do something, whereas in college, you just, you know, it's just your team. You don't worry about other people like that. So I think the biggest difference is budget, you know, outside of pace and IQ and, you know, parent involvement. You still, I think coaches get a little bit of that in college, but where I may be inclined to answer a phone call from a parent that may be unhappy about playing time, a college coach will say, I'm not answering that call. And their AD's not gonna make them. The president of the university is not gonna make them. Whereas in the high school level, you know, my AD, our principal, our president may say, you know, take that call, make sure you know, because you wanna make sure that there's no you know, bad publicity or whatever you wanna say. Whereas colleges is like, if you don't like it, go somewhere else. Period. No explanation needed. So I think that's kind of the biggest difference, where these, you know, kids are still learning at the high school level, so you have to kind of meet them where they are. Now, there is a breaking point. There is a cutoff point. There are some non-negotiables, but I think at the collegiate level, they're really kind of unconcerned with that at that point, because now it's about my job. This is my livelihood. Whereas coaching is my supplemental job. It's not something I'm making a lot of money. I think someone broke it down. It's like 50 cents per hour that you're making. You know what I mean?
Right.
Whereas, you know, Gino's making 6 figures. He don't care about all that.
Right. Huge difference in pay. And in between your college and your high school coaching, as you mentioned earlier, you got into officiating as a way to stay involved after tearing your ACL a third time. Do you remember the first game you officiated, and what attracted you to become an official for as long as you did?
I'm trying to think of the first game. You might have to ask my husband that. You know, they all run together for me. But I will say, I remember the moment that I said, I'm not going to be playing any more pickup basketball, and I will consider officiating. And that was at the YWCA when I tore my knee again. At that time, I was playing in, I don't know if you know these officials, Mike Bronson and Carl Britt were very prominent high school coaches and coached in college. Officials. High school officials, and they did some college officiating, had even done some of my games at Concordia. Excuse me. So they were officiating the game, and I blew my knee out again, and they said, you know, Crystal, they said, I think you would be a really good official. They said, you're in shape, you're young, you move well. They said the only thing you need to do is learn the rules and learn the mechanics of the game. And they say the rules, because a lot of coaches and players, they don't know the rules of the game, proper terminology and stuff like that. But they told me, you know, because I was like, I'm done. They was like, well, you don't have to be done with the sport. You can still officiate. And so I looked into it, and I went and I was on an elevator going over to check out at the at the school board. It's the 807 building at that time for Minneapolis, and I saw volleyball officiating phone number to call, so I did some volleyball officiating as well as basketball. And so that's kind of how I started. I did Minneapolis Parks and Rec, so I literally officiated Parks and Rec, lower level high school, varsity high school, junior college, Division II. So I did it all at that time. So which was really rewarding. It gave me a totally different aspect of seeing the game, because I didn't like officials when I played. You know, I thought they were real nitpicky, and so I think the coaching, I coached first, and I think the coaching helped the officiating. Then now I'm back to coaching again. I think it makes me appreciate the officials more than the first time I started coaching.
And as you noted, a lot of games become a blur because as officials you have to be the impartial arbitrator.
Yep.
But I would say one game, at least for me, that stood out, the 2014 state championship. I know you got to call a lot of state tournament games during your time as an official, but I bring that up because it was Park Center Marshall, triple overtime game, and two of your former teammates were in the building. One was a coach, and Dana Jobert, and Leah Bielson, of course, calls the state tournament games. I know officials can't comment on games they work, but do the three of you ever share a laugh or just think about how surreal it was that, you know, these three college kids came back at the same venue where you all grew up and played? And
I wouldn't say we shared a laugh, but I think
I just
we
have
did.
to think
we
it's
did,
kind
we
of
did
crazy
make
that it
note of
happened.
that. You know, we did make note of that. Somebody probably posted about it, that, you know, that how cool was it that three former Gophers are working in three different capacities in the girls' state tournament back at Williams Arena, which was like, you can't even script that, you know. But that was really, really, that game was a fun game. I'm glad I didn't have to do it again, because I think they played the next year too. But
that one was settled in regulation, so.
Yeah. But when I saw it again, I was like, oh my goodness, I remember what happened before.
You were thinking, here we go again,
yeah,
right?
But it's always, you know, anytime that I'm out and about and I see another Gopher women's basketball, I mean, there's not a lot of places that you can go in the either education field or in the athletic field that you don't see a former Gopher, you know, male or female, doing some good things. So that really was a memorable event that happened, which I thought was pretty cool.
And just overall, what do you think it said about how quickly you developed as an official, where you were getting called up regularly for state tournament games? That wasn't just a one-off. You know, you had done games before. I think you did some until you got back into coaching. So
Yeah.
you were a regular presence.
Yeah, I didn't.
I wouldn't have met you if it wasn't for that.
That's true, but and again, it's nothing that I aspired to. You know, some people aspire to be state tournament officials and go on and officiate college. I just took the opportunities as they came, and I do wish in that aspect that I had started earlier, but I wouldn't do it different. You know, because the coaching, like I said, the coaching helped the officiating. The officiating now helps the coaching again. And I wish I had a better respect for officials when I played even. You know, just like, you know, there's things that I would never do if I were to go back and play basketball again and have officials. I would not say a word to them. Now, as a coach, I also think that I may be tough on officials too, because I know where you should be. Not judgment, but position on the floor and kicking calls. Those are things that, as an official, you got to do it right. You got to do it right. Now, your judgment, that's different, but not hustling up and down the court, being inconsistent, those kind of things, it doesn't make for a good official. Lacking in your rules, interpretation, and in your mechanics, like those things should be no-brainers for officials. And if you're not doing those, as a coach, you will hear from me.
I had your husband Andre on an earlier show, and he mentioned what he got from you was taking a more calm, collected approach to officiating. Was there anything you picked up from him with his experience as an umpire, basketball official? He was more modest about it, but I have to imagine with the two of you and your officiating background, there was some crossover osmosis type.
Yeah. Well, you know, the thing that I got from him was that, like, his approach to officiating, like, he takes it seriously. He gets in his rule book. He leans on on other officials and bounces, plays off of them, and just his approach to it. He was the reason why I actually applied to for the state, because I never used to apply for it, but he encouraged me to go and watch Dee Cantor, who is the first female NBA official, and she was doing some workshop, I think, at for the Minnesota Lynx. And he encouraged me to go to that. And when I went, and I was just blown away, like, oh, wow. Like, I was just officiating just to officiate. But, going to that really opened up my eyes to some things. And then I went to an officials camp, and that's how I got picked up to officiate in college. So I did Division III in Minnesota, MIACN, and in Wisconsin. But it was because, he encouraged me to take develop myself at a higher level, and not just, showing up for, weekend tournaments, but to really, aspire high at what I'm doing. But you got to put that time in and watch your film and stuff like that. So I got a lot of that part from him.
And you mentioned how your background has sort of fed into your perspective as a coach now. And one of my more amusing moments was last season. As you know, I call a lot of games, and I did the Cretin-Derham Hall White Bear Lake game. And you mentioned your son, Trey, who is becoming quite the player these days, but was trying to suggest that a charge he got called for was not legitimate, but you went back, looked at the film, which you've done many times as an official and as a coach, and corrected him, I would say is the best way of putting it. So, I mentioned this to Andre, I think for both Trey and Marquise, your two sons, just having the two of you who can see the game from both perspectives, from coaching and officiating, can help them become smarter, because I have to imagine when you look back, saw the film, and saw that the call on Trey was accurate, his defender was outside the zone. It's like, I think that was a reminder of, like, you can't just pull a fast one on you.
Absolutely, and not only that, but, like, in anything, like, if you're unsure, go back and take a look if you can take a look. So, a lot of times people say, oh, that ref was cheating, and that, it's like, no, they're not. And if you feel they are, go and look for yourself, And the great thing about, video is that the camera doesn't lie. Now, at that moment, he may have felt that the player was moving, he was not there, but that's all the more reason that you don't say anything to the official. Because look, you're gonna risk getting a tech tossed out of the game, and guess what? You were wrong. So, it's just something that I, take some pride in, take some value in, and I tell both of my kids, like, don't just look at what you do well. Look at your opponents. Look at the officials. Like, that official got it right. Are you gonna go back and apologize? Probably not. Probably don't even remember the official that it was, but. It's all perspective. It's all perspective, and if more parents did it, if more coaches, more players did it, they would see things differently. And at the end of the day, right or wrong, you move on because the official's not going to change the call. So I like to give him a hard time with that, and he'll come home, yeah, they made this bad call and that bad call, and I'm like, leave it.
Right, just next play, just
next
keep
play,
going.
let it go and move on.
And I'd say he's done a good job of that.
Oh yeah,
if the summer is any indication.
He's getting a lot better. He's getting a lot better. I think that, you know, I think with a lot of kids or coaches even, you know, summer basketball is just a little bit different. You know, high school, everybody knows each other really well, and they know what gets under each other's skin, whether it's officials, coaches, players. But the summer is quick, you know, and you don't have time for all that. So you just got to play. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You just have to play.
Now, you traded the officiating jersey for the coach's attire again at Minneapolis North, now here. And you mentioned you wanted to be more active in helping mentor the next generation of athletes. So
Sure.
When did you decide that you were going to get back into coaching, and how did you get the opportunity to start up the second phase of your coaching career at Minneapolis North?
Okay. Man, it was, so I was working with Minneapolis Parks and Recreation Board, and I had just, well, actually I've been there for like 9 years. And actually not 9 years, I had just left the University of Minnesota. I had been with the park boards for about 3 or 4 years. And people just kept coming back and saying, Crystal, we need some more women coaches and kids at North, because Marquise was at Minneapolis North High School. He was a sophomore at that time. But when he was a freshman, players and friends and parents would always say, you should get back into coaching. You should get back into coaching, because I coached Marquise's team from 5th grade to 8th grade. And so when those boys went on to high school, I just stopped coaching. And they said, you know, people just kept saying, are you gonna come to the women? You're gonna come back to the girls? You're gonna come and help the girls? And I'd always done my triple threat, so I've been doing that for years. And I was just like, nope, I'm just gonna do the clinics that I do, and I want to go watch the games. I don't want to deal with parents. I don't want to deal with all that comes in with coaching. And I don't know what it was. I just ended up just saying, okay, I'll give it a try. You know, it wasn't any big epiphany or anything like that. I was just like, sure, you know. And so when I went back to, when I went to coach at North, just like here, I wanted to be in the building. I think it's really important that if you're going, if you coach and you really want to get to know your kids, being in the building with them is the ideal place to be. And I'm not a you know, I don't work for corporate, and I don't own my own business and things of that sort. So I've always done community work. I'm not a licensed teacher, but I think I relate to all kids. So being in the school, I think, is not only a benefit to the kids that I coach, but for all of the children. So I don't know what it was, to be honest with you. I just said, sure, I'll do it. And I really, it's the toughest work that you ever want to do, but it's also some of the most rewarding work that I've done.
And if your activity's any indication, you know, even though you moved from North to Cretin-Derham Hall a year ago, you know, you're still supportive of the kids you coached at North, and you take a vested interest in what they're doing. And you know, you spent 3 years at North, if I remember. So,
yeah.
What did you take from those 3 years? You know, even though you didn't get a chance to play for a state title, you weren't necessarily the top team, but a lot of the kids that you coached, speak fondly of you, and still, you still check up on them as they move their way through college. So what were those 3 years like, and how did that help you get acclimated to coaching again?
It really, I really enjoyed, first let me say that the state tournament was never the goal, which is why, I could walk away from it and still be okay, because that wasn't the goal. The goal was to come in and impact those girls' lives close up, so I treated officiating the same way, I felt like I was mentoring. I felt like I was showing girls another way to be connected with sport. So even as an official, I would talk to players, I would talk to parents and explain the rules and things like that. So I looked at that as mentoring. Coming back to coaching, I felt like I could do that at another level, and I can do it. I felt like I can impact even more kids as well, but for being in the school. So I just think that with the state tournament not being the goal, I felt my takeaways were that I grew with those young ladies for those 3 years. Like, I had some young ladies that had really bad relationships with their parents, really bad relationships with their teachers, bad relationships with their teammates, and I wanted to show them a better way to communicate, and so basketball was just an outlet for us to connect. But through basketball, I could show them, like, even with myself, like, you have a disagreement with me, yelling and cussing me out isn't the way to do it, but to say, hey coach, this is how you made me feel when you just screamed across the court and told me that, my shot's whack, or whatever it may be, so that correction, that I had to show them how to do it differently in another setting, whether it's with parents or boyfriends or whatever the case may be. So I really grew. There were some things that I was like, I'm not going to deal with this, I'm not going to deal with that, they're going to be off my team. And, I really ate my words, because I was like, what? Getting to know this kid off the court, shows and gives me a better understanding as to why she may relate this way, or why she feels like that, or why she's a hothead on the court, you know what I mean? So it really, I think as much as I perhaps taught them, they taught me just as much, and how to just relate to people that have a different understanding of things, because I like, basketball is super serious for me. Like, when I played, even when I coached, but I think that the players that I had really showed me, like, there's a different way. Like, I love it too, even if I don't react to it the way you do, I still really appreciate this game. So I really value that time. I don't take it lightly. I appreciated it, and I'm grateful for it.
So what led you to Cretin-Derham Hall?
So with Cretin-Derham Hall, I felt like I needed a change of pace in terms of being at Minneapolis North. I felt like I wanted more for myself. I didn't feel like I was able to make the change that I wanted to make, really in the building, from a different level. This had nothing to do with coaching, nothing to do with the kids. I just felt like my feelings about things wasn't being heard, or I felt like part of the problem with what was going on with the kids and things like that. So what I decided to do was I said, well, you know, I'm not going to be in the building. So my biggest struggle was, would I still coach the kids? And I decided no on that because I just felt like, you know, there was too much confusion in other areas that I said, the relationship that I have with them, the mentoring that I do with them, I don't have to be their coach to do it, which is why I still go back, you know what I mean? And we still go to movies, we still go out to eat. So again, it was never about the state tournament because it was about going to state or winning games. I'd have said, oh, I gotta stay until we do this. But that was never my goal, so which made it even, not easier, but I was able to do it when I did it, because what typically happens when you're coaching even, and if it's not about the right things, then you will stay in a situation that you should have been out of because you're trying to chase something that may never come. So it was never about that. It was about growth for the kids. And I saw my girls' grades go up. I saw them coming to school every day. I saw them treating their teachers differently. I saw their teachers treating them differently. I saw homes being mended with parental relationships. So I was just like, I think I've accomplished a lot, you know. Excuse me, all my players went to college. Now, they didn't go to play basketball, but they graduated. They went to college. They're have good jobs if they're still not in college. They're just great people, just great people. So I'm happy and I'm pleased with that.
Yeah, got to meet a couple of them. Marshall comes to mind. Where
Yeah.
I guess she will be playing basketball now that she's finished up her associates.
She's going back. And I talked to her because I've known Marshall and her family for years. And she's
she
just
refers
like,
to Trey as her little cousin, at 6'3".
Yeah. But even someone like Marshall, like if she were to go back, hindsight, you know, she was still growing and she gets it now. You know, she just got a full-time job with the bank that started off as an internship, you know, but she got those life skills that she's able to maneuver in the workplace to go from one level to another level. And I think basketball afforded that. Even though she didn't play basketball after high school, those principles and things like that, along with, you know, she comes from a great home. You know, her mom is no nonsense, you know, so I just think, and so you asked, you know, why Cretin-Derham Hall? Well, the AD here, Phil Archer, is a University of Minnesota alum, played football for the U, and we just talked, you know, and we talked about growing this school and adding to diversity and bringing another element, another culture here that was not here. And so when I was looking at Cretin-Derham Hall, and I was just like, oh, there's no diversity here, you know. I can be that person that I felt needed to be here. So that's why I chose Cretin-Derham Hall. I really like the balance of academics and athletics as well as faith, you know. So I just think I bring a different perspective to CDH, and I think it's being well received. And I see an aspect that I didn't even know existed in schools, and being a public school student myself all my life.
Right.
Like
coming from a coaching job at a public school.
All of that, you know, and the resources and alum giving back and families more involved and administration and teachers and coaches all working together. I think that's a good recipe for success.
And what would you make of your first season at Cretin-Derham Hall, and maybe what parts from North, you mentioned life skills, implementing other assets that the kids will use long after they finish playing basketball. So after your first year, what has changed, what has stayed the same, and what are you looking forward to as you continue putting your stamp on this Cretin-Derham Hall program?
I think that, so as you said, I bring a lot of things, like my philosophies have not changed. I value a high work ethic, teamwork. I value family-orientated things. I value giving back. So a lot of the things that I did at Minneapolis North, student athletes here at CDH are really, really high achieving in academics. And I want to bring that balance for them because they over exceed for academics. I want to show them that you can do them both, that you can be very, very good in basketball as well as very, very good in athletics. So I want to show them that there's another level of things that you can do in high school, and you don't just have to play just to be out here playing. Like, you can have set goals and you can set them high, and you can go from ninth grade to varsity, and maybe even from varsity on and play in college, or you may not, So I'm just trying to help them find that balance, because I think academically they have that. And I think they eat, sleep, and breathe academics. But I want to show them, okay, you can bring that athletics into that world and be just as successful if you want to.
And on top of all that, you teased this a while ago. You've done the triple threat clinic for several years, and you've been expanding that operation over the last couple of years. You've added an all-star game of sorts, which you got to host right here.
Yes.
I guess it helps to have that kind of connection.
Oh yeah.
But
facilities is huge.
But what led you to start Triple Threat, and what does it say about what you're doing and the impact to see it grow as much as it had, where you said you're hosting more clinics now, you're hosting more camps, and now you had an all-star game that not only included high school graduates, but also 7th, 8th graders, some of them who got to play varsity. So, continuing to be that embodiment of mentoring the next generation.
Sure. So Triple Threat came about because a group of University of Minnesota women's basketball players, Linda Roberts, I think she may be the all-time leading rebounder at the U, one of the highest scorers at the U. She's in the rafters.
Yep.
Lisa Lissamore, who works state high school league. Kathy Island Madison, who also played for the Gophers, and Faith Johnson Patterson, as well as some other women in the St. Paul area, wanted to have a girls' basketball clinic, inner city, that they wanted it to be affordable for girls. And so they started this program, or this clinic, called Shooting for the Stars. And they started that, I want to say it was in 1989. And it started off in St. Paul, moved to Minneapolis, came back to St. Paul. It was funded by PAL for years, Police Athletic League. And so my freshman year, I came and Linda Roberts asked me to come and speak at it. So I would come and speak every summer to the little girls or young girls, and then after I graduated, I started coming back, and I was a clinician, and then I directed the camp. And Linda still did the behind the scenes work. I just showed up and made sure that it was organized and things of that sort. So about 5 or 6 years ago, Linda Roberts was one of the last to still be involved in it, and she just said, I can't do this much longer. I like for you to keep it going. And she asked me, change the name. I don't care about what the name of it is, but still make it affordable for girls, keep it in the city, and, do well with it. And so I I took her advice on it, and I changed it from shooting for the stars to triple threat. And that's actually how it started. And the one thing that I really liked about it is that it was all women that ran it. So that's something that I wanted to continue to do with the clinic. So I may have, if I have a guy on my staff, I may let him help out, or even my kids, or, stuff like that. But all of the women that are, really right in front of the girls, I think there's a lot of value in that, because, we need to see each other leading the way. So, so this is my, I want to say this is my 6th year doing it. Yeah, because I think I started it the year before I was at Minneapolis North High School. And, like you mentioned, I'm really fortunate to have it in a facility like this. No red tape, I just come in and work with the young girls. The parents have been awesome. I have some kids that have gone for 3-4 years. Some kids do, so it's for 8th through 11th graders. 8 through 11-year-olds, and then 12 and up. And it's just really, really growing. So from that, I wanted to also do a showcase for seniors, because we have a state showcase that is
the All-Star Series?
The All-Star Series, and it's chosen, and I just feel like there's a lot more young ladies that are missed in that process for whatever reason. And I just want to give some more girls some opportunities to be seen. I added for colleges to come and watch, and I can only have junior colleges or Division III that are offering scholarships, but I thought that was well received. And last year when I did it, I had a AAU team from St. Paul to come in and play at halftime. And one of the little girls said, "Well, what about us?" And that's how the middle school was birthed. And so the B Elite Middle School, I talked with Tyrese Cox at Minneapolis Parks and Rec, and I spoke about, just traveling across the country with my son and seeing really high-level clinics being done for boys, and I wanted to do that for girls. So that's how the B Elite, and it's an invite clinic that's for girls that want to play at a higher level. Maybe they want to play varsity basketball, or they want to go on and play college basketball. Is to give them some really advanced teachings of the sport, and not just at that real fundamental level, which is what triple threat does. So,
for you, I think around basketball, a lot of folks that I've talked to, mutual friends of ours, fellow coaches, and officials, past and present, everyone I've spoken to, when your name comes up, they all praise the work that you've done, the professionalism you exhibit in all facets of the game. So what does it mean for you to kind of be that symbol, and also kind of be a symbol of change for the good, as far as a female role model, an African American role model, and I guess how would you like to continue growing that part of yourself as you continue with all of the efforts you take part in?
I appreciate hearing that, because everyone wants to be well spoken of or well thought of. So I appreciate that people see that. I also get that, in that if I'm hosting an event, that people send their kids because they know they're going to be treated well. They know that they're going to be in a safe environment. They know that they're going to learn at another level. They know that discipline is going to be there, and some of the same things that they may teach their daughters at home that they'll get from me. So I do appreciate that, but I also want to give back what I've had. I've just always had really positive people in my life. Like I'm really blessed and fortunate not to have been abused and, used and treated badly. I've just always had people that really truly cared for me, wanted the best for me, and have put me in position to be successful. And that's what I set out to do, just to give back what was given to me, be that person that I have. Like some people say they want to be the person that they didn't have. Because my experience have been so positive, I want to be that person that I had. So that's all that I set out to be. I'm not here to try and make WNBA stars, you know what I mean? Like I just want to help you grow and see things from another perspective, but to just give you what hopefully you are getting at home, or maybe you're not getting it at home, because some kids don't have that positive reinforcement. They don't have that support, which is why I make an effort to go and watch them in other areas. I'll go watch a track game. I watch volleyball practices, because
I remember you even went to the softball section finals.
I go to softball.
Even if that's not your sport.
And I sat in the car because I'm not going to be out there with the gnats. But, that's because I have players out there. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And it's more than basketball. If the only time you see your coach is during the basketball games, like and you run track or you play softball, and your coach never comes and says, "Oh, let me see what this is another passion of yours. Let me see how that is." What is that really saying? So I try to do that for other people's kids, and the other thing is people do it for mine. I'm not able to be everywhere, but I get calls all the time. Hey, I'm gonna go and watch Marquise in Wapaton. I'm like, oh, that's great. I can't get out there this weekend. You want me to bring him a care package, Or, oh, Trey got a football game. I want to come and watch his game. And this is people that like friends, So I think that, we really do have to be a village for our young people and show them that we care for them, not just for what they can do for us, so that's important.
I would say next spring, make sure you've got bug spray with. So if you,
I think I got my ankles bit up last at an event, but and it's fun. It gets me out the house. I feel like it keeps me young.
Oh, right.
It keeps me young. It keeps me engaged. It keeps me connected. And I get to see their parents, too, because it does a lot for me when I see someone who doesn't have a kid on the basketball team but is coming to watch my son. That says a lot. That says a lot. So I try to be that person, too.
Well, especially being at Cretin-Derham Hall, during the conference part of the season, since they split, or they do a split site where the girls team plays one place and the boys play another. When you're coaching a game, that's often when your son's playing. So it's nice that folks are able to keep tabs on them. Well, it helps when you lead the state in assists, I suppose.
Yeah, it's entertaining to see it, but even if it wasn't, I just. I went to soccer games since coming here. I've never had a soccer player. Well, North didn't even have soccer.
Right.
But,
they've got it here.
I had some girls that play soccer.
They've got lacrosse, too.
and I go and watch them, and I'm like, and they're like, Coach, you came to my game. It means a lot. Like you should see kids' eyes light up because you cared enough to come and check them out doing it. And I know nothing about soccer. So.
Well, your husband, myself, if you ever need a refresher on the rules.
Yes, he gave me a hard time the other day because he wants me to go and see a Loons game with him.
Oh, United.
And it's United.
United. Loons is their nickname, but United is the official name.
So, see, I don't know anything about soccer, but anyway, so he said, you mean to tell me you go to a CDH high school girls soccer game, but you haven't been to? And I'm like, no, because my girls play. So I'm going to go and check that out. So.
Well, and then I know you're not necessarily a a fortune teller, but do you think your son might have a chance at leading the state in assists again?
I don't know. I don't know.
That has to be pretty cool,
I think
though.
he's going to do whatever his team needs to be successful. If that's sharing the ball, then I'm sure he'll do it.
If you're able to go back to your playing days as we wrap up this conversation that you and I could probably go on for days.
Right.
I feel like we've only scratched the surface in the time we've had together. But what was your most exciting moment as a player, high school or college, and what was your most embarrassing moment?
I don't get embarrassed, so no, I'm joking.
Yeah.
I'm joking.
Well, no, and I don't mean it like, oh, ha ha, what a fool.
Yeah,
but it's
yeah,
just
yeah.
one of those things where you felt silly doing it, but it's one of those things you laugh about it now. That's where I was getting at.
Man. Well, I've already said my most exciting times were was the Notre Dame one. That was really a highlight of my career. In terms of like, I mean, my teammates may be able to do a better job of that, but I will say,
Shannon Loveline or
I will say, like, my Coach Fields used to like ride me right when I was before I got hurt, and I used to be kind of fancy with my layups and stuff, and so that one time she stopped practice and she was just like, she said something like, this isn't the playgrounds of Roxbury or something like that, but because I'm doing a scoop layup or
you're trying to make it on
finger roll.
You were trying to get on
or something
Sports
like
Center,
that.
it sounds
Yeah,
like.
and she was just like, this is not that anymore. So, and she, everybody is cracked up laughing and something like that. But I don't know. Honestly, I don't know.
That's okay.
I don't know if I could tell you a funny time other than like,
well,
something that I probably wouldn't want you to know, but we thought was funny.
Oh, I get you. Well, for me, a funny moment was that alumni game all those years ago, where and you and I think we're gonna laugh
He's
about
not
this.
gonna let me live this down.
Well, no, because you pulled off the play.
It was kind of cool though.
That's what I mean.
It was cool, wasn't
If you hadn't pulled it off, I probably would have just been like, oh, that. You see, I won't let you forget because you pulled off this play. So this was an alumni game, and I like to try out different things just to show folks, hey, here's what I can do for you for this program or this school, or if I get lucky enough, if if a scout ever watches one of my games, I'm hoping what I do could be a calling card and saying, hey, I could do this for you too.
Sure.
But the alumni game, they did that for a couple of years. I think they still do a gathering.
Yeah, they haven't played the game probably since that game, but.
I'm sure everyone else saw that play and they were like, nope, we can't match this. We just got to shut it down.
Yeah, but see, like I said, that people don't know I have that in me. But
I think, and I heard that, like, Andre told me it was cool that your sons got to see that because they didn't get to see much of you as a player.
Right.
So here is the play. There was a steal, I think, and so Crystal's team is going in transition. She's wearing her glasses, and something happened where I think the ball hit you in the face.
Yeah, or I just like.
And your glasses are coming off, and so I'm thinking, uh-oh, what's going to happen? Because I don't know how you could see without them.
Right.
You still found your target. As your glasses are fumbling off, you go behind the back, one-handed dish, and I forget who got the pass and scored the layup, but I thought that was the funniest thing where your glasses are coming off. It didn't faze you a bit. You just
the play goes on. But people like that's where Trey gets his dimes from. You see that? Did you see that dime? Like that's where he got it from.
His dime. I mean, how it's like not just
he got
one
behind
dime.
The back. Yeah, but that's where he got it from. It came from.
But and so when you mentioned kind of your fanciness, and my mind went back to the North Heritage game.
Okay.
Where I think it was either regulation or overtime, where your team had a chance to go up against Heritage Christian, and Serena Ballard went behind the back on a 2-on-1, where I'm thinking she could have lobbed it to Andrea, and
what'd I do?
I don't think you didn't really go at her like that. I think you just had this look of frustration, like, are you kidding me? And Tisa, your buddy, felt the same way, and
Yeah.
I guess they laugh about it afterward.
Yeah,
But it's like
I still give Serena a hard time about
but
that.
I can understand why you did that because you went through the same thing, LaRue.
Yeah. But here's my thing: like, if you're gonna do it, you got to hit your target.
Right.
Her
and
ball came to me over in the
Well,
sideline.
and Andrea was alongside, and so I'm
Yeah.
thinking, why did you do that? Like,
Yeah.
if Andrea's behind you, it makes sense, but
Yeah. I think she did that
you could
again.
even hear my voice where I'm thinking, oh no, I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, here's this transition look,
Yeah.
and that.
Yeah, we had that game. Yeah, I'm gonna see Serena this weekend. I might have to remind her again.
Oh, I'm
but
sure
I
she won't
give
forget
I
it.
give her a hard time for that.
Well, and it's one of those things you laugh at it later, but
Sure.
it's like I could see why you get on folks about that because you tried to do the same thing, and your coach LaRue is saying,
Oh yeah.
yeah, it's like you don't want to do it just to get on SportsCenter. You want to do
Right.
it if it makes sense.
Right. Or if you're capable of doing it. But see, she didn't want me to do it at all. She was like, no, we not.
I mean,
But I was like, I know what I'm doing. I could do
yeah,
this.
and it's nice to get a flashy dime,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's like, does
Keep
it work
it simple.
does it work in the context of what you're doing?
Right. But the other thing is just keep it simple. Keep it simple.
Right.
That's what I tell the kids.
Because if you
I
got
was
the
that
si-
flashy kid, but keep it simple.
Right, but if you get the simple stuff down, then you can build on that.
Yeah.
Or Sarah Scalia, who, was
Amazing.
right. It's like
Amazing.
working on the 3-pointers and then worked on her range. Or Franny Hottinger, because one of your players this past
Sure.
year, one heck of a score.
Very good.
And I guess
She
if you're
should
going to
have a
make a
good year.
transition, what a great player to have to start a new phase.
It definitely
Of your career.
it definitely helped, but at the same time, the group that we have coming back, I think we'll have a lot more depth, a lot more balance, and it makes things, believe it or not, it makes it a little bit easier when you're not so dependent on one person. So.
And
That's going to be. I'm excited about the group that because coaches can work with their players from June 1st to July 31st, and just really pleasantly surprised and excited about the group that we have coming in because there's kids that want to be here. They want to. They actually. Want to excel in basketball at another level. So that's cool to have, a nice little balance of kids that, want to play at the next level, those that, just want to share in the camaraderie of playing in high school. And then we have that group that's learning, that works with Coach Tisa Mitchell, and she does a phenomenal job with those, we call it entry level players.
And Tisa touched on that with me when she and I did an earlier taping of this series, and I think even just getting that first year label off too. Now folks, now the players that are sticking around, they know what you're about, and I guess one of them that comes to mind is Audrey Martinez-Stewart, that little pest that you like to call her, not in a bad way, but you saw some glimpses of it last year, and I have to imagine she's going to be excited, ready to play, and
really excited.
And they'll be and with Franny gone, I think of the line from Coach Carter. There'll be some new leading scorers, and it will be exciting to see who steps up in that role.
Absolutely, and she's another one that she was young, but to have a strong point guard that the only thing that was probably missing was some consistency, but you could see that she was solid. She's a solid guard. In another year, I mean, she's just going to be a junior, which is awesome. And to have a player like Sydney Jackson coming back, that she's really
she went to state for track, right?
She's a track athlete, actually All-American in the 800, but just loves basketball too, and I can relate to. Just being that kind of athlete, and even though basketball isn't her main sport, but she has quickness, she has athleticism, and just great work ethic. So those are two girls that are coming back, and I know you started with Audrey, but we have some really good pieces to the puzzle that'll be here. and Anna Cullen, she's going to be a senior who is going to, I think, have a breakout year for us. With last year, just really bought into the system and did well. So I have some girls that, like I said, I'm excited about. I think that they want to be here, they want to get better, they want to work together, and that's a recipe for success in my book.
Yeah, I only mentioned Audrey because I don't know all the players by heart like you do. But I'm looking forward to seeing what this new look team will bring. And I certainly want to thank you for taking the time
Thank you, Mike,
to do this. And like as I said earlier, you are a walking encyclopedia with all of your background and all of the folks you grew up watching. And I'm thinking, you and I would almost have to do this again just to touch on some of the parts of your career.
That would be cool. That would be cool.
In more detail. So, yeah, this was a great.
Well, thank you again.
Yes.
Thank you all for all you do for women's and girls basketball. It's important. Outside of Leah B. Olson, I don't even know if there's anyone else that covers it like you do, which is awesome.
You may be the first person to put me in the same category as Leah B. Olson.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how to take. I don't know how I should handle that. But
that's a compliment, though, right?
Yes.
It's a compliment.
No, I appreciate that, but I'm not looking to be the next Leah per se. I'm trying to take my own path or forge my own path, but
there's enough lanes for everybody.
Right. Well, women's sports have. If it wasn't for women's sports, I wouldn't have covered 4 WNBA titles. I wouldn't have met you or Franny or Sarah Scalia or all the long list of coaches and athletes and officials that I've met in 13 years. So
Awesome.
People ask me, why do you cover girls sports so much? I'm like, well, that's why. If you've seen my audience, there's an appetite for this.
That's right.
So.
That's right. Well, thank you.
Yes.
I appreciate it.
Crystal Flint, you'll see her on the sidelines right here at the Joe Mauer Fieldhouse at Cretin-Derham Hall, and you'll see her around in the fall and spring season as she supports her athletes, both her son in Trey and Marquise, and all the other athletes that she gets a chance to coach in basketball, whether they do soccer or volleyball or whatever sport. So if you come to a Cretin-Derham Hall game, chances are, if she's not coaching, you'll see her somewhere. And that does it for this episode of Mic'd Up Sports. And if you'd like to be on a future episode, just contact us at tsbtelevision@gmail.com. All you need is a good story, a background in sports, and we'd love to have you share your story with us. Until next time, I'm Mike Beaton. Thanks for watching.